Brain produces monthly a substance that the Vatican calls holy chrism in secret rituals. You waste it without knowing.
Christos was never a proper name. In Greek, it literally means oil.
The same precious oil that your pineal and pituitary glands secrete when the moon crosses the degree of your birth. Carey exposed in his book, God, Man, the Word Made Flesh, preserve this secretion for 72 hours without alcohol and it rises through the spine, explodes in potency in the brain, and produces the state they sell as salvation through Jesus. Golgotha means place of the skull, and it's not a hill in Jerusalem. It's the base of your skull where the optic nerves cross. The bread and wine of communion, metaphors for this sacred secretion from your body, which they replaced with crackers and juice. Constantine, who boiled his own wife, changed the original lunar calendar. Result, you never get the timing of your sacred cycles right. While popes fast during the correct lunar periods, you pay tithes, thinking you need a priest to talk to God. The illumination you beg for on your knees is being produced right now in your head.
For 1,700 years, billions of human beings have knelt before altars, drunk sacramental wine, and eaten wheat wafers, believing that these external rituals would guarantee their eternal salvation. All of them were deceived. The substance they sought outside of themselves circulates at this exact moment through your spinal cord, and you will probably waste it today, as you did yesterday, as you will tomorrow. In 1918, an American physician and biochemist named George Washington Carey published a text that should have shaken the foundations of institutionalized Christianity. The document, titled The Antichrist, did not attack any religious figure. On the contrary, it revealed that the very concept of Christ had been deliberately inverted, transformed from an internal biochemical process into an external historical narrative. Carey was not a delusional mystic or a rebellious theologian. He was a researcher who had dedicated decades to the comparative study of ancient texts, human anatomy, and esoteric traditions preserved by secret communities. What Carey discovered fundamentally challenges the way Western civilization has understood spirituality for nearly 2 millennia. According to his research, corroborated by fragments of knowledge preserved by the Essenes, Gnostics, and medieval alchemists, Christ is not and never was a person. The Greek word Christos literally means oil or ointment, a physical, measurable secretion that the human body produces in precise lunar cycles. This substance, known to initiates as the sacred oil, descends through the spinal column, starting from specific glands in the brain. The early Christians, those who gathered secretly in the Roman catacombs, making the sign of the fish, knew this secret. They knew that the Hebrew and Greek scriptures constituted elaborate manuals of esoteric anatomy, where each character, each place, and each event described real physiological processes occurring within the temple of the human body. When they read about the River Jordan, they visualized the spinal cord. When they meditated on Bethlehem, the house of bread, they focused on the solar plexus where the Christic seed is born monthly. Golgotha was not a distant hill in Jerusalem, but the human skull itself where crucifixion occurs, not a death, but an energetic amplification of extraordinary proportions. This interpretation does not arise from modern speculations or contemporary conspiracy theories. Carey meticulously documented how this knowledge appears encoded in multiple traditions. In the Egyptian hieroglyphs that describe the Ankh as the key to eternal life, in the Vedic texts that detail the movement of Kundalini, and in the alchemical treatises that speak of the distillation of philosophical mercury. All these traditions, separated by thousands of years and miles, describe the same biochemical process using different symbolisms. The question that must be forming in your mind right now is obvious. If this is true, why have you never heard about it before? The answer goes back to the year 325 of the Common Era, when a Roman emperor named Constantine, a man who had murdered his own mother and boiled his wife in oil, convened the Council of Nicaea. For months, bishops who barely understood Greek debated about the nature of Christian symbols. According to Carey, apparently trivial questions revealed the profound. Whether angels possessed wings was decided by only 3 votes of difference. The bishops did not understand that Jacob in Hebrew means heel or circle, referring to the zodiacal cycles, and that the ladder of angels represented the influence of the signs on earth.
The story of Santa Claus, why he comes down the chimney is because this juice or this whatever substance actually passes what's called the claustrum, which is where they got Santa Claus. So it goes down the chimney and back up the chimney.
About 15,000 years ago, a very powerful being descended upon this planet and sat in meditation in the mountains. He remained motionless for hours, days, and months. Many people began to gather around him, as they had never seen anything like it before. He appeared completely content, sitting in meditation without needing food or water. Additionally, he was unusually tall and had skin of a bluish-grey color. Eventually, all who initially sat to admire him departed, except for 7 individuals who became known as the Saptarishi. This meditating being became the Adi Yogi, the first yogi, known as Lord Shiva. Shiva imparted his yogic knowledge and wisdom to these Saptarishi, who then dispersed across all continents to spread the knowledge of yoga. Shiva taught them about liberation through individual chakras, of which he said there were 114, with 112 within the human body and 2 outside of it. Of these 114 chakras, there are 7 main ones that run along our spinal column, from the base to the top of the head. If we explore the mystical traditions that have flourished across different cultures and eras, we find that, despite their outward diversity, they share a surprisingly similar core of wisdom. Among their deepest teachings, there is a recurring idea. Within every human being resides a primordial spark, a latent creative force that rests in the depths of our being, often symbolized as a coiled serpent at the base of the spine. It is said that when this energy is awakened, it begins a subtle ascent along the body's central axis, activating centers of power and awareness as it rises. Upon reaching the highest point of the head, it triggers an inner expansion that completely transforms our perception and reconnects us with a spiritual power we believed to be lost. Some traditions interpret this awakening as the opening of a vision beyond the physical, linked to the activation of the pineal gland. In India, this force is known as Kundalini, while certain branches of Gnostic Christianity describe it as the raising of the sacred chrism, a vital substance connected to the cerebrospinal fluid, regarded as the bearer of the divine essence within the human being. In this video, we will explore how this ancient wisdom from India intertwines with the hidden teachings in the Bible, as well as with recent scientific research. We will discover how these age-old teachings converge to reveal a profound understanding of spiritual awakening and the activation of the pineal gland, offering a unique perspective that bridges tradition and science in the quest for inner knowledge and spiritual enlightenment. As detailed earlier, not only does Hindu tradition speak of this energy flowing through the spine, but the Bible itself, in coded form, also mentions it. In 1918, a mysterious book with deep Hermetic roots and a notable alchemical influence was published. This book explores how words contain hidden meanings that our ancestors understood well. The Bible, more than just a historical narrative, is indeed a code, a manual filled with written clues so that those who take the time to decipher it can chart their own path to ascension, much like Jesus Christ did. This book, written by Dr. George W. Carey, who combined religion, astrology, anatomy, and chemistry, begins as follows. Primitive Christians, the Essenes, fully realized and taught the great truth that Christ was a substance, an oil or ointment contained especially in the spinal cord, consequently in all parts of the body. As every nerve in the body is directly or indirectly connected with the wonderful river that flows out of Eden, the upper brain, to water the garden. The early Christians knew that the scriptures, whether written in ancient Hebrew or the Greek, were allegories, parables or fables based on the human body, fearfully and wonderfully made. These adepts knew that the secretion, grey matter, creative, that issues, secretes, from the cerebrum, was the source and cause of the physical expression called man. And they knew that the river of Jordan was symbolized in the spinal cord, and that the Dead Sea was used to symbolize the sacred plexus at the base of the spinal column, where the Jordan spinal cord ends, typifying the entrance of Jordan into the Dead Sea. When the oil, ointment, is crucified, to crucify means to increase in power 1,000-fold, not to kill, it remains 2 days and a half, the moon's period in a sign, in the tomb, cerebellum, and on the third day ascends to the pineal gland. The pineal gland is the pinnacle of the temple. This Christos, or oil present in the Jordan River, referenced in the book, is what is now known as cerebrospinal fluid. George W. Carey, in his book, was decoding the Bible and showing how, through cryptic language and allegories or parables, the original writers described the process of spiritual enlightenment, union with God, or what Hindus called the ascension of Kundalini. At the core of these teachings is the concept that the human body is not just a vessel, but a sacred temple housing immense potential. Rather than literal accounts of historical events, there is the understanding of Christ not as an external figure, but as a divine substance inherent within the human body, an oil or ointment primarily residing within the spinal cord, linking body and spirit in a unique symbiosis. The transformative process describes how this essence of Christ ascends, refines, and resurrects within the individual, creating a profound spiritual awakening. In other words, this interpretation of biblical narratives suggests that stories of birth, death, and resurrection are allegorical representations of a transformative process that occurs within the human body, an internal journey towards enlightenment. This book details a method to achieve this resurrection of Christ, which involves identifying the zodiacal position of the moon on the day of your birth. Each month, when the moon returns to that position, a series of guidelines are followed to facilitate the activation of the pineal gland. Now, let's address the activation of the pineal gland from a scientific perspective. Current research corroborates this ancient knowledge transmitted by various cultures worldwide. Dr. Joe Dispenza, after years of research and hundreds of hours of experimentation, has scientifically and replicably unraveled this ancient and powerful mystery. The pineal gland is a neuroendocrine transducer responsible for secreting melatonin, which controls the circadian physiological rhythm. A new form of biomineralization of the human pineal gland is being studied, involving microcrystals less than 20 microns in size. These crystals are responsible for electromechanical and biological transduction mechanisms due to their piezoelectric properties. The piezoelectric effect occurs when pressure is exerted on a material, and this mechanical charge is transformed into an electric charge. The pineal gland contains calcite crystals, calcium, carbon, and oxygen, that, due to their structure, can be electrically activated and generate electromagnetic fields tuned into information. The pineal gland receives information from the non-visible electromagnetic field and converts it into meaningful messages. This is what a transducer does. A transducer receives a signal in the form of one type of energy and converts it into a different signal. For example, antennas pick up TV, radio, and Wi-Fi waves, which are invisible frequencies. The pineal gland acts similarly, tuning into frequencies beyond our three-dimensional reality based on the five senses. When the pineal gland is activated, it can tune into higher dimensions and convert that information into sacred geometry and transcendent experiences. To activate the pineal gland, the piezoelectric effect of the calcite microcrystals is crucial. Dispenza teaches a breathing technique in his meditations aimed at releasing stored potential energy, such as emotions in the lower three centers. When inhaling air, one should contract the muscles of the perineum and follow the breath from the base of the spine to the top of the head, holding the breath and creating pressure in the spinal cord tissues. The cerebrospinal fluid flows upward and generates a mechanical force on the pineal gland, converting pressure into an electrical charge. This action compresses the crystals, creating the piezoelectric effect. The pineal gland crystals generate an electrical charge in response to pressure and exhibit piezoelectric effects. When the crystals reach their stretching limit, they contract, and the electromagnetic field changes direction, moving towards the pineal gland. As the electromagnetic field reaches the pineal gland crystals, it compresses them again, creating a new electromagnetic field. This cycle of expansion and contraction maintains a continuous pulse in the electromagnetic field. By inhaling through the nose and contracting the intrinsic muscles of the perineum, we channel the cerebrospinal fluid towards the brain, following the energy flow with our attention towards the head. We hold our breath and tighten the intrinsic muscles, thereby increasing intrathecal pressure, which will move the cerebrospinal fluid from the fourth ventricle through a small channel to the third ventricle. At the same time, the fluid will travel through the cerebellum, compressing the crystals of the pineal gland. By increasing intrathecal pressure, we channel a greater amount of fluid into the third ventricle chamber and the space around the cerebellum. Therefore, when you hold your breath and tighten, this extra volume of fluid will exert pressure on the crystals, causing them to compress and activating the piezoelectric effect. At that moment, the pineal gland becomes an antenna capable of picking up increasingly subtle signals from the field. This is the first necessary event to activate the pineal gland. What happens next is that the pineal gland releases its metabolites. The stimulation produced by the acceleration of the fluid, combined with the electrical activation created by the increased intrathecal pressure in a closed system, causes the gland to secrete a series of more complex and enhanced melatonin metabolites into the brain. Each time you perform this breathing exercise, you send charged particles through the spinal cord. By increasing speed and acceleration, these particles create an inductance field. Like a vacuum, the inductance field carries energy from the lower centers, involved with orgasm, digestion, and stress responses, and delivers it directly into the brain in an upward spiral movement. It is the coiled serpent of Kundalini ascending. Once the energy reaches the brainstem, the thalamic gate opens like a door, allowing the energy to flow from the reticular formation to the thalamus, where it transmits information to the neocortex. At this moment, the reticular formation opens up, and you experience higher levels of consciousness, becoming more aware and awake. When the energy reaches each thalamic junction, the thalamus, acting as a repeater station for other parts of the brain, sends a message directly to the pineal gland to secrete its metabolites into the brain. As a result, the thinking brain, or neocortex, becomes excited and enters higher brainwave patterns, such as gamma waves. The pineal gland could be considered the alchemist of the brain, because it transmutes melatonin into very potent neurotransmitters, such as pinoline, melatonin metabolites, and DMT. Dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, is one of the most powerful hallucinogenic substances known to man. When ingesting ayahuasca or other plant chemicals containing DMT, the body receives only DMT, but when the pineal gland is activated, it receives a complete mixture of chemicals, leading to even deeper, authentic, and transcendental internal experiences. Some reported experiences include significant time dilation, journeys to other planes of existence, visions of complex geometric patterns, and encounters with spiritual beings in mystical interdimensional realities. Due to the profound relaxation induced by the release of melatonin and its derivatives in the pineal gland, the external world and the body cease to exist in our perception. We temporarily lose interest in the environment, allowing us to focus more deeply on the present moment. In the brain, not only does energy increase, but mental images also improve, becoming brighter and more real than those experienced through our senses. By activating the pineal gland, we can directly access the source, connect with our higher self, or the infinite energy of God.